Ladies and gentlemen, hi, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. Recently, David Sirlin, one of the lead producers at DICE for Battlefield 6, has gone through and detailed a handful of gameplay updates and different balancing changes coming to Battlefield 6, prepped for launch, essentially. This is based off of feedback that we got throughout the beta, then also what they've gotten throughout labs as well. And there's some pretty interesting changes and core mechanics being updated here for launch to have the better balance across the board, basically. So, first up here, this has been a large discussion over the past few weeks. There's been this clip going around. I won't show it, obviously, because it is, of course, labs gameplay that's NDA'd, but it's essentially of players on top of a tower on Firestorm, and they are constantly spamming snipes with the anti-tank launchers, basically. So they're in a position that can't really be hit unless you're sniping at super far distances, infinitely resupplying stuff, essentially, right? And Ghost Gaming ends up quoting this, saying, "This is a demonstration of why open classes don't work. Support with ammo and resupply in a sniper, an APS gadget with engineer sniper launchers on Firestorm getting constantly resupplied. It creates these ridiculously broken combinations." And David Sirlin actually replied directly to this. So again, I love to see that we have a lead producer going through and actually being as transparent, as interactive as he has been on Twitter the past little while, saying this button still exists in the originals, and the fact that we have more anti-tank on the map isn't really a problem either. Let's not pretend this type of gameplay is effective in any way, shape, or form. It really isn't unless you can safeguard the POS, which can be cleansed with fire. And to this, he gets responded and says, "AT is an anti-tank. There is a problem. We have way too much anti-tank and anti-air firepower in the hands on infantry. Infantry is more dangerous to vehicles than vehicles are to infantry, with helicopters at the bottom of the food chain with next to no survivability." And to this, David ends up responding saying, "This is a balance issue wholesale, not specific to this situation, however, and we are actively working on this as well. Rather have two weak vehicles than two powerful to start. It's a tricky one as players get better at using them over time as well." So essentially saying, with vehicle balance, with weapon balance against vehicles, anti-tank, anti-air, etc., they plan on having vehicles maybe being a little bit weaker to start, have players have the chance to, get familiar with them, really get the expertise down in handling them and maneuvering them, and then seeing where they stand on the food chain. If people get more used to flying the helicopters and the jets or positioning the tanks correctly, then is there a more competitive balance, or is it still just anti-tank, anti-air is still very effective? Okay, then they can go through and buff the vehicles. You'd rather have that situation where you can learn from it instead of vehicles just being insanely overpowered to the point where you then have to hard nerf them to try and create a balance where you may overreact with nerfs there and potentially diminish some gameplay there. So an interesting POV on vehicle balance that they're already actively working on, they say. And there's a couple of responses that David got to this tweet in specific. Another one says, "This type of gameplay has been effective since Battlefield 2. The only difference is on how many it took to be effective. You've been making it easier for players to make this effective. 4 snipers, 2 anti-tank, a medic bag, an ammo bag. In BF6 open weapon, you only need 4 people. In BF2, it required like 8. David does respond and clarify yet again, saying, "For clarity, 2 times anti-tank is not going to be a thing either. I'm personally happy to see that we're using more anti-tank and players understanding that the directionality of damage on armored vehicles is important to gameplay. Now we just have to balance it. I prefer them being too weak over too powerful as we do that." So really doubling down on the fact that they'd rather have weaker vehicles as opposed to overpowered vehicles, but also they are going to be limiting the amount of anti-tank, anti-air you can couple. Of course, in the beta, you were able to have 2 launchers on the same class, and they already confirmed that's not going to be a combo you're going to be able to do. And by the way, as we are going through the various different gameplay updates and details that have been shared recently, if you guys enjoy the video, you find the information helpful, a like rating is always appreciated. It really does help grow the channel, and it shares the video around to new viewers. And if you happen to be one of those new viewers and you want to ensure you're always up to date with everything going on in Battlefield, be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on those post notifications. So next up here, we actually have a pretty detailed thread, again, sort of piggybacking off of open weapons, closed weapons, weapon balance versus vehicles. Battlefield Bulletin reports those tweets that we were just talking about there, saying open weapons is a balance issue wholesale with, ATs and AAs. To this gets quoted, he's right, open weapons is not why infantry has so much anti-air, anti-tank firepower. However, in my opinion, the primary weapons available to the engineer makes the weapon class too versatile and too appealing. It's the amount of engineers with AT and AA as a whole that is simply too much. And David says, "I've never seen a healthier class usage percentage in Battlefield. It's not a bad thing." So basically going against the claim that there's too many engineers on a map, saying that it's actually healthier than ever across engineer, assault, recon, support, which is what they're going for here. You want to have that strong balance across the board. David gets tweeted at saying, open weapons will destroy balance. There's a lot of very hot takes on open versus closed. What's the downside of carrying the best assault rifle as engineer? Why remove spawn beacon from sniper class if weapons will be open? Now I can play as assault while carrying a sniper rifle and a shotgun. Sniper class perks are nothing worthy. David says, downside, you're still not getting your signature buff for SMGs, which is situational, but still there are certain advantages to using your preferred class weaponry. Also don't get the assault signature trait for assault rifles, which matter quite a lot to making the full use of it. Balance in the beta was pretty good. Hello shotties, again indicating that that shotgun's going to be a whole lot worse. They've already gone through and made some balancing changes, but on average there was a healthy split. It's responded to. Perks were never enough to steer me away from strong weapons and preferred gadgets and will never be for the majority. Carbines or assault rifles will overcome all other full auto weapons in close to mid range. I don't feel like I'm underperforming by not using an SMG while playing as engineer. David says strong, but not strongest. Optimal use is not always available, but it's your choice, sandbox and all. Open beta saw very healthy and signature heavy selection for open weapons. Could not be more happy with those stats, but limited selection launch will be a much larger beast. Essentially confirming that in general here, they did have a ton of success with open versus closed weapon balance in the beta, and even in open weapon balance, situations and playlists, players were still actively engaging with the weapons that were meant for their class and for their role. There wasn't a ton of crisscrossing necessarily. There still were those situations, and that's what they're trying to offer there in case you want to do stuff like that. But they're also saying that players are very aware of the class bonuses for certain weapons, and a lot of people lean into that. Another response to David says, I knew that was coming. Of course, it was more popular when you have a UI like that, and the first thing you see is normal conquest and normal breakthrough. If you would have put close weapons highlighted in there, many I bet would have gone for that as like the healthier mode. You can't compare. And David does say again, we normalize stats for pick impact from position, which is something we tested heavily with A/B testing. So no, that's not something we haven't taken into consideration. Given the number of players we saw, we are very confident that this data tells us proper things. So basically saying the information that they got for the beta on open versus closed is very effective, and it tells them exactly what they need to know to balance for launch. And another response here under the same topic, the numbers look good, no doubt, but when trying to pilot a helicopter or drive a tank, the onslaught of constant damage coming your way from enemy engineers does not feel healthy. And David does say that's been tuned since the open beta. Try labs next time. So already tuning some vehicle damage and how spammy that could feel. Piggybacking off of the vehicle discussion, somebody tweets at David saying, I know vehicles are a big debate right now, and rightfully so. All I'm asking is, can you please not nerf engineers into the ground to compensate for this? Engineers finally feel good again, especially how weak they were in 2042. David says, don't worry on that. We want strong, clear class identity. I'm certain that identity does come through into the engineers' gadgets, signature, and field upgrade paths. So they are putting a lot of emphasis on all of the class elements here to make sure everyone is specifically strong for what it's supposed to be doing. Then we get a lot of talk about auto spotting, and this was obviously a very hot topic during the beta as well. The idea of just shooting at Doritos regardless of what was happening. We've talked a little bit about this previously, but David goes into a lot more detail here with some back and forth on Twitter. He gets tweeted at saying, the battle royale for Battlefield 6 looks amazing. My one concern as a convert from COD is the auto marking of players by just looking at them. I know this happens a lot, but do you have an action or have like a button command to do it, not just looking in their direction? Basically saying you have to manually do this stuff to make it a little bit more personal, I guess, putting you into the position to do it, not just automatically doing it for you. David said, we have tuned this significantly from the open beta. It's always tricky to get just right, but we do need to do it at times. It depends on the lighting as well. So we rather err on the side of Doritos over not seeing enemies at all. And now we're tuning it to be less instant and less distant as well. So there's going to be a delay in auto pings, then also the range at which you can auto ping are going to be nerfed here coming up for launch of Battlefield 6. Another one says, leave the auto spot for snipers only, but make other classes do it manually. David said they do have to press a button if they want anyone else to see it. That was not the case in the open beta, or at least you couldn't see the difference there. Back are the hollow diamonds again, so you can tell passive from active as well. So new feature that they're going to go through and actually update for launch there too. And then just for reassurance, in case you're wondering if this is something that's going to be ongoing, he does respond to another comment here saying, I assume spotting and information warfare is going to be something that we're going to balance quite a lot as we settle in with the launch roster of classes and gadgets, but also labs will continue to test this further. Now, detailing a bit of visibility stuff here, he gets again tweeted at saying, why are you complicating everything in this Battlefield? If you have previous ones that sold well, Battlefield 1 or 3 that sold the most, and you copy more Call of Duty, more experiments, and it'll be a failure like 2042. Seems a bit exaggerated there, a little bit dramatic, but David does respond saying, Battlefield 1, for example, had notorious issues with spotting and soldier visibility at launch. Just saying, they took us a bunch of time to get that right, and that was not the case initially. It's a tricky area. There is no right, and it does differ per game settings as well. So spotting and general player visibility definitely is going to be a major focus, it seems like, going into launch. And funny enough, as of this morning when I was getting ready to record this video, David actually updated this thread a little bit, saying additional details. If you are a recon, ADSing and triggering the recon auto spot ability, this has been tuned to, however, to require much longer time to activate. These spots are all visible to the team too, of course. He gets tweeted at, is there an overall option to bind spotting to a different button than pinging? And Florian Drunks here, another game designer on Battlefield 6, says, I don't think there is, no, at least not right now. Winking face emoji, which kind of indicates that that's something they're going to be working on here, something they're going to be updating for launch, presumably as well, or shortly thereafter. So some interesting balance updates have already been detailed in sort of like an unofficial way, because it is just the devs on Twitter. It's not through like full patch notes, so we don't have the exact specifics, but vehicle balance update, open and closed balance updates, different gear, gadgets, stuff like that. And then obviously a lot of visibility, a lot of pinging balance updates already in the works, some already out there in labs, and even more to come at launch as well. That being said, that's going to wrap things up for this video, though. If you guys enjoyed, be sure to drop a like on it, and if you're new here, hit that subscribe button on your way out to always stay up to date with everything going on in Battlefield. But once again, thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time, take it easy, have an awesome rest of your day, and I'll catch you later. Peace out.